You're on a road that seems to lead nowhere. Nothing but brush, rock, wind, and that feeling that the world is too far away. Then, out of nowhere, a curve, a recess in the embankment, and a door. Not a house door, a metal door, thick, no window, no sign explaining. Beside it, a ventilation duct, a drainage pipe, and a fence, too new for a place too old. The question isn't, what is this? The question is another, why is this here? And why does it seem like no one wants you to notice? Today is part 2, tunnels, technical entrances, and remote repeaters. Infrastructures that are in the middle of nowhere, but function as if the world depends on them. And at the end, I'll give you a simple method to identify these points on the map, even before someone shows you the place. Above all, the rule you need to remember, the middle of nowhere doesn't exist. If a structure is isolated, it's isolated for a reason. And that reason is almost always one of these 3: control, survival, or coverage. Control because it reduces curiosity and reduces risk. Survival because it protects systems that need to remain operational in the worst-case scenario. Coverage because the best camouflage is to appear unimportant. And when you understand this, you start to see patterns. Patterns of doors, patterns of antennas, patterns of silence. And that's when the story gets dangerous, because the more you understand, the more you realize these structures are not rare. Let's start with tunnels and technical entrances. Most people imagine a tunnel as a secret passage from a movie. But in real life, a tunnel is almost always something simpler. And precisely because of that, more frightening. It is infrastructure. Duct, gallery, maintenance passage, piping, cable route, access to reservoirs.
And the door you see is not the secret entrance. It is the entrance to work. Only it's the work of a system that you shouldn't remember exists. That's why these doors look the same all over the world. Thick metal, reinforced structure, industrial hardware. And almost always, near them, you see a trio that gives it away: ventilation, drainage, and power. Ventilation because any underground space needs to breathe. Drainage because water finds everything, sooner or later. And power because without power, there is no control, no monitoring, no maintenance. When you see a well-placed duct, a grate, or those pipes that come out of the ground and rise like short chimneys, that usually means one thing: there is underground volume. And if there is underground volume, there is a reason. But now comes the part that almost no one notices: the shape of the surrounding area. If the terrain has been cut in a very clean way, if there is an artificial plateau, if there is gravel out of the ordinary, or a trench made with care, someone has been there, and they were there with planning. Now, why put this in the middle of nowhere? Because the underground is a perfect place for 3 things: hiding, protecting, and maintaining stability. Constant temperature, protection from the elements, fire protection, and harder to attack. That's why underground structures appear near mountains, isolated hills, cliffs, and areas where you can control access through few roads. If there's only one path, you control who arrives. If there's a narrow valley, you control the view. And if there are few people living nearby, you control curiosity. That's the first loop of the video. Isolation isn't an accident. It's part of the design.
Now comes the second cut: remote antennas and repeaters. These are the places that confuse people the most because they seem too simple. It's just a tower. It's just an antenna. But no antenna exists alone. Antenna is a network, and network is redundancy. And redundancy is the kind of thing that governments and large systems take more seriously than any ordinary person imagines. A remote repeater may be there for emergencies, for border coverage, for route control, or for linking systems that need to cross great distances without relying on urban infrastructure. And here comes the visual detail. A remote repeater is rarely just a tower. It has at least 4 signals: technical shelter, power, grounding, and perimeter. The technical shelter might be a tiny little house that seems useless, but
That's where the racks, control, and protection are kept. Power can be cables arriving, or it can be a generator, panels, and batteries. Grounding appears as bars, thick cables, and metal structures on the ground. And the perimeter is where you separate the normal from the sensitive. A simple fence is to keep animals away. A double fence is to keep people away. And when you see a generic sign, without a company name, without a function, just a stark warning, that's not aesthetics, it's information policy. The less you know, the less you ask. But here's the part that clicks in your head. Many of these towers in the middle of nowhere are connected to something else you can't see. They may be aligned by distance, they may follow an invisible route, and sometimes when you mark 3 or 4 on a map, you realize they form a line that crosses mountains, valleys, and connects points that no one mentions. And when you find a tower like this near a technical entrance, the game changes, because the antenna may be the outside of something underground. It's the ear, the mouth,
The signal. And the underground is the body, the support. Now, the inevitable question: why does this seem abandoned? Why do so many remote installations look ugly, old, forgotten? Because beauty draws attention, and attention is a risk. The design is utilitarian for a reason: to last, be cheap to maintain, and not arouse curiosity. And when a structure goes into standby mode, it looks exactly like this: silent, discreet, closed, but ready. Ready to be used when something goes wrong elsewhere. That's the second loop. Abandonment may just be a way to save on presence. The system doesn't need you to see people, it needs to function. Now, I'm going to take you on a mental journey. Imagine an isolated hill. At the top, a tower. Beside it, a small technical building. On the side of the hill, a metal door. In the valley, a road that passes by, seemingly without reason. If you look quickly, it seems like a coincidence. But if you look like an engineer, this is design. The top receives a signal. The small building processes and protects. The door provides access to what needs to remain stable, cool, and secure. And the distant road prevents anyone from getting too close. Nothing there is by chance. And when you realize this, you start to wonder how many similar hills exist out there. How many lonely towers you've already ignored. How many doors on the slope you've never noticed. If you're following along so far, let me make you a quick invitation. Subscribe now, because this series is becoming more specific with each episode. And comment MAP if you want me to do the next one with real visual analysis, marking patterns and explaining what to observe without making up stories. Because from here on out, I'm going to give you a 3-layer method that turns any satellite print into a clue. And the last layer is the most revealing. Layer 1, geometry. Human things are straight. The natural world is irregular. If in the middle of an irregular terrain you see a perfect plateau, a clean cut, a road that ends abruptly, that's intervention. Layer 2, repetition. When you encounter the same type of technical house repeated in distant points with the same shape, the same courtyard, the same fence, that's a network. Layer 3, relation. Door and antenna nearby, tower on top aligned with another, a recessed road that serves no one. When elements relate, function appears. And here's the final detail that almost no one notices: shadow and orientation. Antennas and towers have an angle. Technical entrances have a direction. If you see several points looking at the same route, you're seeing priority. It's not random, it's coverage. Now, to wrap up with impact, I want you to go back to the scene from the beginning. The door in the middle of nowhere, the new fence, the recent padlock, the silence. You already know what this means. Someone wants it to work, but doesn't want it to be a topic. And the truth is that the modern world is sustained by things like this: invisible by design, forgotten by appearance, and protected by necessity. If you want part 3, I'll make an even stronger cut: coastal infrastructures and underground access points, or strategic depots and contingency bases.
Comment which one you want, and comment map if you want me to take real patterns and turn them into a complete visual guide.